Welcome everyone to Stadium Journeys Obstructed Views, the show where a couple of guys in a couple of countries have a couple of beers and discuss a stadium somewhere in the world and their experiences there. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
And we are excited to be here with you tonight. Feels like it's been a while, but it hasn't. Before we get started, please make sure to subscribe to the Stadium Journey YouTube channel, like the video, leave a comment, like, share, follow us, all that stuff. Check out stadiumjourney.com for all of our fantastic content. So let's get rolling. Dave, what are you drinking today?
All right. So the way my beer fridge works is...
Beer fridge. Love a beer fridge.
Yeah, you got to have a beer fridge. The way it works is it just sort of receives whatever when people come over. And sometimes the contents sit for a little bit. And sometimes they leave right away. But often when people come over, they leave beer. So I don't have the foggiest clue where this beer came from. I'm pretty sure I didn't buy it, although it's possible I did buy it. But it is from Railway City Brewery in St. Thomas, Ontario, which is, kind of London direction. And I have a jumbo IPA.
Is it a big can or is it just...
Looking all circus-like. Jumbo, like the elephant.
Like the elephant. I gotcha.
Jumbo Dumbo. It's kind of, it is IPA-ish. I'm not normally a huge IPA fan. This is probably on the bitter side for me, but it is it does have that fruity tinge to it. So I'm okay with that, I guess. So what do you got?
All right. So this past weekend, I attended the Army-Navy football game, so I'm feeling very patriotic lately. So when I was went out shopping before we recorded today to pick up a couple beers for the show, and I was immediately drawn to this nice beer can with, stop reflecting, with the American flag and the American eagle on it. It is called a Freedom Light Lager. It's from a brewery in Norton, Massachusetts, not far from Foxborough, so it's all tied in together. Bog Iron Brewing. It's a New England light lager, which I didn't know was a thing, but it's pretty good. Tastes like a lager to me. So if it's light, I don't know if it's light in calories. I don't think that's their purpose. I think it's light in flavor, but it's a good beer, so it fits for me and for what we're doing today. So if we were visiting today's destination, we might be drinking I love this name, a Rabble Rouser double IPA from Democracy Brewing. Isn't that a great name for a brewery in Boston, Massachusetts? Because today we're talking about TD Garden, home of the Boston Celtics. Before we get started, let's take a look at the Stadium Vitals. Okay, so we're talking about the Boston Celtics, one of the legendary, most successful teams in the NBA, 17 championships in all. A team that really leans into their history in a big way. But their arena is not so historic. Most of their success, most of their championships were won at their old home, the Boston Garden. The Garden, the new Garden, it's called the TD Garden. Everybody in Boston just calls it the Garden. Doesn't have that history. So how does that affect your Celtics experience, knowing that this is just the new place?
So, let's be real. I think it's fair to say the Celtics are easily in the top two most legendary NBA franchises.
There's a yin and a yang to the NBA, absolutely.
Absolutely. You got the Celtics on one hand, and you got the Lakers on the other hand, and the Knicks always seem to be brought up for some reason.
Nobody brings up the Knicks. What are you talking about?
You don't watch enough sports television. They're always bringing up the Knicks.
2 titles. No, the Knicks no.
That's true. But that being said, absolutely legendary team. And you're right. When I think of the Boston Garden, I think of the original 6. I think of Maple Leaf Gardens and Joe Louis Arena and the Forum in Montreal. I kind of think in that sense. Of course, it was the home of a gazillion different Celtics championships. I love looking back at the stories of the old Lakers. Like right now, I'm into the Elgin Baylor's book, who never won a championship because he always lost to the Lakers. or to the Celtics.
Yeah,
You know, Bill Russell just owned everybody. And it's kind of funny how like the Lakers we see now were not, when Russell was around, they were not the legendary Lakers. I mean, they were good, but they just didn't have those championships. And a lot of those really kind of hit. They won a couple in like the 70s, but once Magic Johnson got there, then it was a whole new story. That being said, you're right. They don't have the big long history. I think you said they won one championship at TD Garden.
One in the new building, 16 in the old building. Yes.
Okay. I think they try. It starts with like when you say Celtics, outside of the people, what do you think of? You think of the floor. You know, it's probably the most iconic piece of a basketball arena there is, right?
Absolutely. You know what? That's why it was so jarring with the in-season tournament this year to see the Celtics playing in Boston on a different floor. Wow. It was really, really strange.
Yeah. The parquet floor and
the banners. Yeah.
The old parquet floor was kind of legendary in that there were some funny spots, and Larry Bird, being as brilliant as he was, knew where those funny spots were.
That's just Red Auerbach was a master of selling those kind of things and getting in the opponent's head. You ask any of the old Celtics, well, the ones that are still around, said there were no dead spots. That was just a figment. It wasn't, but if the opponents believed that it was, then it was.
Hey, I've heard opponents say that there were dead spots, so
because they believed it was the leprechauns. The leprechauns there.
So yeah, the floor, the leprechaun, and then all those championship banners. To me, kind of where the TD Garden falls off for the Celtics is immediately it looks like the home of the Bruins.
Well,
all those black and yellow seats.
Well, they're not black and yellow anymore. Now they are all black.
Okay.
They've been through two different sets of seats since then. The reason being very simple: the Bruins own the building. Celtics are tenants.
Okay. Now, do the Celtics and Bruins have a amicable relationship? Whereas I would say like the Sixers and the Flyers in Philly do not necessarily have that strong relationship. And then you got a whole other host, like you got in New York, like the Knicks and Rangers are owned by the same person. In Toronto, the Raptors and the Leafs are owned by the same company. What's it like for the Celtics versus the Bruins there?
I think it hasn't always been cozy, but I think right now the two ownership groups are in a decent place. So you don't hear of any threats by the Celtics to build their own place and move out. Well, plus, I mean, if you know the story of what it took to get the Garden built, you would say that, yeah, where in Boston are you going to build an arena anywhere? Anyway, there's no place. When they were building the new Garden, the plans, the original blueprints called for the new building to be built just north of the old building. You know how far north it was built from the old Boston Garden? 9 inches.
That's amazing.
I don't know how they built it. How did somebody get in there and build? They had to build from the inside, I guess.
I guess. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Pretty wild. There's one, I guess, outside of like those interior pieces, the banner, the floor, the leprechaun. TD Garden is kind of nondescript for me. I've really struggled for a whole week trying to think of like, well, what was it like as a building? I can't come up with too much. I mean, what jumps out at me is it's right by the bridge. I don't know what the name of the bridge is, but it's the
Zakin Bridge,
the suspension bridge kind of thing.
Zakin Bridge, yep. Which
is kind of iconic Boston. When I went, I don't recall seeing any statues or anything like that. I don't know if they were there or not, but yeah, it just seemed physically, it seems pretty nondescript. Not bad. Like looking at your pictures, it looks like it's had a facelift since I was there. But I was like, there's nothing that's just jumping out at me.
And Dave, I will tell you, as someone who's been going to games there since day one, it's almost 30 years old now. I think it's in a couple of years, it will be its 30th season. That was the biggest complaint. It was very vanilla, very nondescript. The exterior, because they had to shoehorn it in, there's no fancy exterior. There was no great facade. And the spot where the old garden stood in front of it when they tore it down was just a parking lot for decades. Nothing there. Very recently, they have finished. It was called North Station Project or something. So now there is a shopping mall, and there's the T station, and there's a giant condominium tower next to it. And it's got that front door that it never had. You used to actually have to go in on one of the sides. You couldn't go in the front of the garden. So that added to just the plain look. Now it's got that front door and that big entry plaza and stuff that it never had. So it looks a lot better. What I would say to you, all that vanilla-ness, though, on the outside, when the Celtics are a good team, like they have been for the past several seasons, there's not a better game day atmosphere in the league. That building is loud. Louder than... I haven't been to a ton of NBA arenas. I've been to between a half dozen and 10. That is the loudest building for the NBA I've been in. It is definitely sensory overload when you're inside there for a game. You also mentioned about statues. Yeah, because it's the home of the Bruins. The statue at the front door is Bobby Orr. You would think a team with the iconic names and all the Hall of Famers that the Celtics had through the years. You know, you think of Bill Russell, you think of Red Auerbach, you think of Larry Bird, you think of John Havlicek, all these names, the legends of the NBA. If you put a team of 12 Celtics together, nobody could touch them. Yeah, there's no signs on the outside. There is a statue of Bill Russell at City Hall.
Okay.
There is a statue of Red Auerbach at Faneuil Hall. So short, maybe a half mile from the Garden, but not where most fans would see him. There is one of Larry Bird up in the suites.
Okay. Yes, it's a colored one.
It's made out of wood. That's why it's inside.
Those are a little disconcerting, those colored ones. They just, I don't know, they don't feel quite right to me.
So yeah,
remind me of that Bob Uecker one. That's a little scary up in the Milwaukee. Stands in Milwaukee.
Yes.
See,
so
now
it does. Yeah, there's nothing that screams, "Hey, Celtics play here."
Here's a big beef that I have with the Celtics, and maybe this is like they've just been too successful. They can't get out of their own way. They're just too successful. I like all of the championship banners. I love the way that's done. It's excellent. I hate the way they've done the retired numbers. Hate it. As a little checkerboard, like it looks like a football pool. Like
because they've retired 20-something numbers.
I get it. I totally get it. But you know, I'm not a Celtics fan per se. I'm not a Boston person. If I wasn't a historian, I couldn't walk into the TD Garden and know who any of these guys are. 36. Who's 36? I don't think there is a 36, but you know,
Marcus Smart was 36. He's not getting his number retired.
There you go. You know, like Reggie Lewis's number is up there, I believe.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you what it is.
35.
See, there you go. I was actually going to guess 35. But there's nothing that distinguishes it from anyone else.
No, I get your point. It's good. And I think it's Mason. I don't know. You know what? Even when I was a kid growing up in the 80s watching the Celtics, that's how they were.
Mm.
So I don't know if it was because of space. Even back then, they had a ton of retired numbers. But yeah, I couldn't tell you the story behind that plain checkerboard. Yeah, you got 0, you got 00, you got 6. You know,
and you're dividing your space in two, because it's not like the Bruins don't have anything hanging, right?
True.
Maybe the answer is like what the Pistons have, and the Red Wings. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this, where they
roll it down for the Bruins.
They roll it down, they roll it up. Yeah. You could do two. It's a Celtics game. Whoosh! Here comes, you know, Kevin McHale's banner, and
yep. Or like the Lakers do and post it on the wall up at the top of the arena.
Yeah,
I don't think there's enough room for that either there.
Yeah. A lot of places don't have enough wall space for that kind of stuff. And then you get up in the girders, and then the sight lines to your banners are not so stellar. But you know, one of the things I did take away from when I went is, and you alluded to this, was the energy level. Now, I went when the big three were there. Well, the modern
You in the 80s?
No, the
The
big
new
three,
big three.
the second, I don't know what you
Yeah,
call them.
I don't know either. The new big
Garnett
three. Yeah.
and
Pierce and
Ray
Allen.
Allen and Paul Pierce. And oftentimes I will say that if I go to two games, like a hockey game, basketball game, almost always the hockey game has more energy. I would say that the Bruins had more energy kind of spaced out throughout. The Celtics are a little flat to start, and I think that's a product of basketball where, it's just more interesting. Like if your time is really divided up, you're best to flick on the basketball game, about halfway through to really get that energy. And
Sure.
and it really built the game that we were at. I remember my kids were pretty small. They were super excited because they were heading towards 100, and the energy level was just building and building and building and building to the point where when they hit 100, the whole place just went nuts. And it wasn't like it was a super tight game. It wasn't a rivalry game or anything like that. But I really felt the energy building.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's spot on, that analysis of basketball being more of a growth. Hockey is more apt to start off big and then level off and then pick up at the end. But yeah, basketball is steady climb through the end. If you were lucky enough, and this is a tradition pretty unique to Boston, most places, if you get to garbage time, people are leaving, looking to beat traffic or just kind of flat. If you go to Boston for a blowout, everybody is sticking around for what they call Geno time. If there's a blowout for the last TV timeout, which usually happens about 4 minutes left in the game, and the Celtics are, they're going to win. Yeah, Red Auerbach used to light a cigar at this time, his victory cigar. Now they do what's called Geno time, when they show an old clip of an old Soul Train. Or what was Dick Clark's show back in the day?
American Bandstand.
I don't know if it's American Bandstand or Soul Train, or maybe it's a mix of both clips together. And they play the Bee Gees, You Should Be Dancing. But the centerpiece of the clips is this guy doing these 70s dance moves, and he's got a shirt that says Geno time on it. It was for Gino. What was the singer? He's Canadian. Gino Vanelli.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's from him, but the whole place absolutely goes bonkers when Geno time comes on the screen. Kevin Garnett used to get on the floor and start dancing when Geno time happened. So
that's awesome.
It doesn't happen very often because usually, they got to be ahead by like 20, 30 points at this point. But when it happens, man, the roof blows off the place. It's really a fun tradition.
Now, do you think, you're going to have to help me out here. I know that some parts of the Celtics are of their game day production are very traditional. I want to say that they still don't have cheerleaders or dancers or anything.
They do.
They do, but they were like the last to the table.
Probably, yes.
Okay.
And their cheerleaders are more like, well, I think that's probably the way around most of the NBA now. It's more of like a stunt dance team than it is cheerleaders.
Okay. And do they have music during the game?
Yes.
That typical stock.
Yeah.
Stock
sometimes.
electronica defense.
You know what? You're very right. For a long time, and this I think was Red Auerbach, and the traditions just really hold on to the old school stuff. And if you heard anything, it would be organ music. But the game day presentation there is pretty identical to anything you're going to find around the league now. So,
is that good? Is that as a hardcore Celtics fan?
Yes and no. I love the old school where the basketball was the focus. Keep your eyes on the court. But now the energy level in Boston rises because of some of the stuff that they do. So I don't think you could just open the doors and keep it quiet all game anymore. I don't think that would work. So you got to get with the times.
And they don't have a mascot there still, do they?
They do. It's not a cute and fuzzy animal though. It is a person dressed up like a leprechaun.
Oh, so Notre Dame like.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
and he's part of the dance team, and he gets out there and does flips and dunks the basketball and all that fun stuff.
Okay.
His name is Lucky. I've got pictures of being Lucky.
His name is Lucky.
Yes.
Does he have Lucky Charms? No.
No, I didn't grab his Lucky Charms. Sorry. Literally or figuratively.
Well, they're for kids anyway.
Silly rabbit.
I think we're mixing our 80s cereals
I think we are. You know what I really miss? Prizes in cereal boxes. I bet we get our co-host Dan to go crazy over something like that.
Probably. Probably. I would sense a tirade. What should the Celtics do different, if anything?
As far as the game day, see, I don't go to the Celtics as much as I go to the Bruins, so I'm not totally versed, but I really have a good time. I remember one of the last times I went to a Celtics game, Pam and I went with a friend of ours and his ex-wife now, and she's not a sports fan in the slightest, and she just said this is just sensory overload here. So, like I would say for all sporting events, tone it all down 20% or something. But what could the Celtics do? I think they do a really nice job of mixing their traditions with a modern presentation. So I don't really know what I would change. I'd get banner 18 up there before the Lakers do.
It's amazing how they still have that kind of cachet. Even, all the big names are gone, right? But they still have that in the media. They still hold that place.
Even when they were struggling and they were not a good team, they were still the Celtics. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
They're one of those teams, and I hate when media types say this because I really don't buy into it. But they're one of those teams where if they're good, the media will say, well, this is good for basketball because the Celtics are good.
Yeah. Well, you think about the run they had in the 60s. What did they win? 11 championships in 12 years.
That's crazy.
And then they won another 2 in the 70s with Havlicek and Collins and JoJo White and that crew, and Paul Silas. Then the 80s came and they won 3 more in the 80s. And then the bottom fell out for a while. And they only won one with Pierce, Garnett, and Allen. They should have won 2. They really choked in one of them. And they've been to the finals since then. They've been the conference finals, I think, like the last 4 years. The NBA finals once, but they haven't climbed over that mountain. But I think they're due to get there.
Here's what I think. I love this about the Lakers, and the rest of the league needs to take notice. Or sorry, not the Lakers, the Celtics. I don't love the Lakers.
Nobody loves the Lakers.
When it so much of basketball now, it just feels like they want to give you this narrative that the NBA started in 1979 and nothing happened before that. It's like
they were all plumbers.
It's like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came in and they just invented this thing called basketball and away we go. And then there was that just massive, huge dynasty that precluded that. And I'm actually, to be honest, I'm a little surprised at how the league revered Bill Russell as much as they did after he passed. In retiring the number 6, everybody's wearing a patch because so much of what the NBA is about is the post 79 and well, we won't talk about when it wasn't on TV, and we don't want to talk about when Wilt scored 50 or when Wilt scored 100 and nobody got it on video or anything like that.
It was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, of all places. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because so many of the legendary things that happened were from before then. And funny fact, you were talking about the tape delay. The Celtics' first championship in the 80s was 1981. The championship game was, even growing up in I was in Rhode Island, close enough to Boston, an hour away. It was on tape delay. So we had to stay up super late to be able to watch the end of that. And it was on a school night. So we were all very miserable the next day. But just shows how far the league's come. And I think Bird and Magic in that era did save the NBA. I think the NBA was, at the time, relegated. They were circling the drain, I think, and they were going to be one of the minor sports. It would have been tough to see basketball as a minor sport, but pro basketball was in trouble. So they saved it, but yeah, they didn't invent it. Big difference there.
Yeah, I'm definitely due for a return, uh, a return to TD Garden.
Well, if you're visiting the area, it is one of the better neighborhoods for an arena. It is absolutely in a stellar location. Even though kind of that gritty dive bar kind of feeling that surrounded the old garden is gone, and some of those old places will never be replaced. They're gone, and everything is new and shiny and upscale surrounding the garden now. But there are great things to do. Sure, if you take a short walk, come out the front door and go that way, you can go to the North End, which is Boston's Little Italy, which fantastic food, and you got like Paul Revere's the North End Church and all that stuff, and you can even walk over to the Constitution, Charleston. If you go straight ahead, you can go down to Faneuil Hall and City Hall, and there's shops and restaurants there. So there's a lot to do within a short walk of the garden. Never mind the Freedom Trail and stuff that links all through the city and the Commons. Boston, if you're there on a nice day, it's all walkable. You could walk from TD Garden to Fenway Park. And if you don't want to walk, you could take the T and get there pretty quickly. So it's a great city for a road trip, and Celtics make a great cornerstone of that trip. So I believe that would be our quick look at the TD Garden, home of the Celtics. Hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you on the road real soon. Cheers.
Cheers.